Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to another Star Wars video. Hope you're having a great day, and today we're once again talking about Skeleton Crew. I'm really loving this show, I'm very excited for episode 4, and in light of that, today we do have some big reveals for it. But first, there is a very curious reference in the second episode of the show which I did mention very briefly in my episode breakdown, but it does have some very interesting implications for a planet in the Andor show, when SM-33 goes through his databank and tries to suggest other planets that the kids might have meant, because Attin isn't one he knows, or supposedly knows, and I did talk about another theory that he might be lying in a separate video. One of the alternate planets he suggests is Aldhani, a fan-favourite terrestrial world where the heist of the rebels took place in the Tony Gilroy show. But after naming it, did you notice SM-33 describes it as a sulphurous bog world, which doesn't match any description we know of it. The episodes that concern Aldhani were filmed on the Scottish Highlands. It's a gorgeous, verdant, terrestrial Earth planet with winding rivers, rolling hills, shepherd's flocks, and green fields. We were even introduced to the Danis, the cultural group of humans who've been there for hundreds of years. So why does SM-33 describe it as a sulphurous bog? If SM-33 really is from the Old Republic, he might be remembering a time when Aldhani was very different. It could be a situation like Tatooine, which used to look very different. It used to be inhabited by a group called the Kamumgar, and it was full of vast oceans and lush rainforests, before it became a backwater desert. So was Aldhani once a sulphurous bog? On the other hand, some fans say SM-33's memory is faulty, he's misremembering, or confusing it for a different planet, and others believe, if he and his captain landed on Attin after the Empire fell, did Aldhani become a sulphurous bog after the Empire left? I don't think so. I think the first two theories are far more probable. A long time ago, before it was a green Earth-like planet, it may have been inhabitable, a sulphurous bog. Maybe during the days of the Rakatan Empire. And it brings up the question I explored a couple of days ago. How old is SM-33? What's even more curious is his description of Port Borgo by comparison is spot on, so maybe Aldhani was once a sulphurous world. What do you think? So staying on the subject of Skeleton Crew, we do have some big details for episode 4. As we approach the halfway point, we're getting into uncharted territory. Jod and the kids think they have the coordinates to Attin, but as we know from the trailer guys, I don't think that's where they're going. There are some other crazy worlds from the promotional footage that we haven't seen yet, and despite Kim saying the other jewels of the Old Republic were destroyed, I'm starting to think that wasn't necessarily true, and we're going to visit one of them. Just a prediction, but if this does end up being the case, I reckon we're going to learn more about Attin from the perspective of one of these neighbouring worlds. Was there some kind of conflict between them? Regardless, my dear friends, we are in for a lot of fun. But two massive bits of info that we do know. According to Robert Timothy Smith, episode 4 is the most Neel-centric episode of the entire season. Are we finally going to learn the name of his species and the reason his ancestors may have been connected to the Great Work? The mural of the barrier at Fern's mum's house seems to imply this. And we also know, my dear friends, this is the episode directed by the Daniels, who are really a fresh addition to the Star Wars universe, considering they're known for their 2022 Everything, Everywhere, All at Once, an absurdist comedy, so we can see why they were assigned the Neel episode. And it appears as though, if some of the early rumours are to be believed, this is the episode we meet a new group of smugglers, ones who I think are more friendly towards the children, and one character we do know the name of, thanks to the Walt Disney Company revealing this on their website, Hayna, played by Halle Finley. And if I were to guess, this is the episode I can imagine there being some tension between the children. As we saw in the last episode, they're starting to question every assumption they ever had about their homeworld. Attin is seen very differently to the rest of the galaxy. They're questioning their parents' jobs, and just like us, they're wondering what is the eternal treasure on Attin. And staying on the subject of Skeleton Crew, another massive reveal for Jod, aka Crimson Jack. According to Jude Law, just like Din Djarin, Jod hates droids. But the question is why? When he was looking for SM-33, he came across a B-1 battle droid, who when powered on, asked a very funny question, did they win the war? Talking about the Separatists. If Jod is a Jedi survivor of Order 66, It makes sense, he had a kind of disgusted reaction. Let's hope he doesn't come across Rex or another clone, his reaction will be similar to Kanan, but in a similar way, battle droids probably remind him of the Clone Wars of old, a time where if he was a Jedi, he probably would have been a Padawan, and it turns out, my dear friends, this was a creative decision Jude himself made on set. He just decided, I don't think Jod likes droids. He says this, I just kept sprinkling it in, and they were like, what are you doing? And I said, I don't know, I just had an idea that something happened in his past, and he doesn't trust them. So is it PTSD from the Clone Wars? Was he a Jedi Padawan of the Republic? He says, quote, Jod has a slight disdain and distrust. But in the same way Din Djarin kind of gets over his fear of droids, he's now fond of R5 and IG-12. Is a similar thing going to happen with Jod and SM-33? Are they going to become good friends? And in other very fascinating Skeleton Crew news, I covered one data source the other day, but now for a second week in a row according to another one, Skeleton Crew has once again failed to crack the top 10 in the streaming charts. This comes from Bespin Bulletin via Variety.com, and they say this, following the release of the series premiere, which consisted of 2 episodes, Variety shared their top 10 streaming originals chart, and the lowest entry, and number 10, was Peacock's The Day of the Jackal, which came in that week with a total of 332 million minutes watched. That means Skeleton Crew received less than this, and so, for a high estimate, on the higher end of things, Skeleton Crew might have gotten about 4.2 million views, but it's very likely to be less. As for the second week, the third episode, minutes watched was significantly less, because the number 10 spot for this week, which was once again The Day of the Jackal, was 288 million minutes watched. And so if Skeleton Crew didn't even rank, once again, but got even less minutes watched, it means that just like for most shows these days, viewership declined again, compared to the first 2 episodes. This is expected. General audiences tend to tune into the first 2 episodes, but then there's a bit of a decline for a few weeks, and then, as has been the trend for some shows like Boba Fett and Mando, viewership for the finale goes up again. And look, I know I've covered viewership quite a lot in recent days, and I don't want to come across as overly repetitive. I'll cover the trends as the episodes and the weeks go on, and we'll see if there's any shift. If there's a big cameo or something massive happens, and word spreads on social media, then maybe there will be a spike. I guess we'll find out soon enough. But, data aside, I think Skeleton Crew is the boost Star Wars needs at the moment. And one positive is that this show is airing over the holidays, so hopefully more families are going to check it out.